Chapter 119. When Yang Chen finally entered the hole that could only allow one underground spirit beast to squeeze in, he could finally take a thorough rest. He was only at the third layer of qi refinement, so he still didn't have the ability to fly. After walking for half a month with hundreds of underground spirit beasts, Yang Chen was exhausted. A high-level spirit beast that looked like a wild boar was blocking the hole. It was stuck by the rocks on both sides, so it couldn't enter or leave. However, it blocked all the other spirit beasts outside. The space in the cave was very large, with a radius of 10 feet. Even if Yang Chen spread out and slept inside, it would still be fine. The most shocking thing was that there was an underground spirit vein that continuously flowed with spiritual qi. It was simply a natural place for cultivation. It was lucky that someone had found such a good place in his previous life. At the moment, Yang Chen did not neglect and directly placed the black jade futon at the exit of the underground spiritual vein. He sat on it and began to meditate. While restoring his spiritual power, he also warmed the meridians in his body. This time, it took Yang Chen 2 days and 2 nights to fully recover the consumption of half a month and the loss of his spiritual awareness brought by sleeplessness. With the abundant underground spirit vein, Yang Chen didn't need to use the powerful medicinal power of the profound yang fruit. He even placed the medicine garden's purifying bottle at the entrance of the spirit vein and slowly absorbed spiritual qi to replenish himself. The immortal fallen abyss was a huge underground hole. No one knew how wide it was. Even with Elder Wu Xiong's power, he still hadn't found the edge of the immortal fallen abyss. As for where these underground spirit beasts had appeared from, there was no clue. All he knew was that there seemed to be no end to these underground spirit beasts. They were constantly charging towards the only exit of Separation Village. The spirited Yang Chen had no intention of investigating these secrets. His main task now was to kill the underground spirit beasts and collect their spiritual essence. At the same time, he could increase his cultivation and fuse with the will of the immortal beheading stage. The yin and yang reversal 5 elements was like a high-speed millstone. When it was focused on an underground spiritual beast, the spiritual energy of the high-level underground spiritual beast would be drained very soon, leaving only a few glittering chalcedonies. As soon as the hole was empty, another underground spirit beast rushed in. It was also stuck and became a dead soul under Yang Chen's hands. At this point, Yang Chen no longer had to worry about his safety. A single spirit beast's attack would not pose a threat to him. On the contrary, with sufficient spiritual power and a safe environment, he could fight the underground spirit beasts endlessly. If anyone in the immortal falling abyss saw the efficiency with which Yang Chen killed the underground spiritual beasts, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop to the ground. When other people killed a spirit beast, they would at least have to protect themselves. Then, they would use their flying swords or magic treasures to chase and attack a spirit beast. If they could kill a spirit beast after spending half a day, it would already be a very good result. It must be known that this was the territory of the underground spirit beasts. The spiritual energy was abundant. Those injured spirit beasts that wandered could recover their injuries at any time. Under such circumstances, the situation of those disciples who came to the immortal falling abyss could almost be described as difficult. How could it be like Yang Chen? It was as easy as grabbing an underground spirit beast and sawing its neck with a small saw blade. His life was extremely regular, constantly killing the underground spirit beasts. After his spiritual power was exhausted, he would sit on the black jade futon to practice and replenish it. After practicing the yin and yang 5 elements secret art once a day, he would practice the 3 purities secret art once a day to absorb the murderous aura caused by killing the underground spirit beasts and temper his spiritual awareness. Then he used the universe treasure-raising secret art to maintain his profound spirit furnace and sword sheath, and then he killed the underground spirit beasts again. In the merit ring, Yang Chen carried enough food and water, and even in order to make his life more colorful, Yang Chen also deliberately planted some vegetables and fruits in the medicine garden. Except that he could not leave here at will, all his life seemed very complete. The underground spirit beasts were almost endless. Yang Chen killed one, and one came, there was no possibility of killing them all. Within a short period of 6 months, Yang Chen almost killed tens of thousands of underground spirit beasts. The amount of spiritual essence he obtained, because of the cleverness of the killing methods and the high grade of the underground spirit beasts, far exceeded this number. Yang Chen now had almost 30 or 40,000 spiritual marrow in his hands. As long as he worked hard for a while, he could get 50,000 by himself. There was no reincarnation of day and night. Under this high-intensity practice, Yang Chen had even forgotten the time. When he used the only spiritual power in his body to kill an underground spirit beast, the entrance was blocked again, and then he returned to the black jade futon and began to cultivate and recover. After dozens of cycles, the spiritual power in his body was almost recovered, but there was no sign of stopping at all. There seemed to be a burst of pressure in the meridians, stretching and shrinking, as if expecting something, and the spiritual power began to accumulate in the meridians. Finally, the surging spiritual power seemed to be suddenly unable to continue to fill, and then began to compress, and soon it reached the extreme. Boom! A certain barrier in the meridians was suddenly broken, and the spiritual power was like a wild horse out of control, continuing to gallop in the body. His whole body was brimming with the feeling of power being released. Yang Chen knew that his spiritual power had once again reached the fourth layer of qi refining. His body seemed to have suddenly become empty. The original spiritual power was not enough to fill Yang Chen's body now. In the underground black jade praying mat, there was an endless stream of spiritual power, and it began to crazily fill the spiritual power emptiness brought about by the promotion of the level. From the third layer to the fourth layer, although it was only a small increase, this increase was a small qualitative change from the early stage to the middle stage of qi refining. This also meant that Yang Chen was no longer an early-stage qi refining rookie, but a middle-stage qi refining rookie. This was not an increase in the level of one type of spiritual power, but an increase in all 10 types of spiritual power of the yin-yang 5 elements art. The spirit vein in the immortal falling abyss was originally full of all attributes, otherwise it would not have been able to give birth to the 5 elemental spirit beasts. A huge amount of spiritual power began to frantically flow into Yang Chen's body, and under Yang Chen's deliberate guidance, the yin-yang 5 elements art began to circulate to its maximum limit, and began to strengthen his internal organs. This was a process that must be experienced after entering the middle stage of qi refining. In fact, the entire qi refining stage was to strengthen one's body to the point that it could withstand even more powerful spiritual power, and thus achieve the goal of foundation establishment. Yang Chen's body had already been strengthened by the life essence of countless immortals, but that kind of demonic technique was from the outside to the inside. Now it was from the inside to the outside. Under the cleansing of the huge amount of spiritual power, Yang Chen did not even care about the spirit beasts underground, and began to concentrate on strengthening his body. Chapter 120. Consolidating one's realm was something everyone had to do after successfully advancing to the next realm. Even the whole process of consolidating is more important than the process of breaking through. It can be used to illustrate the contrast between the two. The process of breaking through is equivalent to hammering the roof of the tallest house you build into a spike, piercing the membrane of the next realm. However, consolidating the realm is to pierce the membrane and strengthen the needle into a huge foundation. The bigger and deeper the foundation, the higher the house can be built in the future. Yang Chen is now like a guy who is laying the foundation, madly absorbing the spiritual energy in the underground spirit vein, laying a solid foundation for himself. In the process of absorption, Yang Chen has to consider another problem. When he was in the early stage of qi refining, Yang Chen's own 5 elements were complete and balanced, so it didn't matter much. However, in the middle stage of qi refining, it was a bit shocking to maintain such a performance. In the future, he must deliberately highlight his own fire attribute cultivation base, otherwise it will definitely make a lot of people have a lot of associations. This time, consolidating the foundation and absorbing spiritual power took almost several times the time before it was completely completed. For Yang Chen, there is almost no interference in this place and the spiritual power is abundant. It is impossible to have any accidents, smoothly consolidating the realm of the 4th layer of qi refining. Level up, Yang Chen immediately began to impatiently take out a flying sword, trying to carry out the second sacrificial refining of the Celestial Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art. The Celestial Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art is definitely a good thing. It can let each of his own attributes of spiritual power produce a small celestial spirit formation. With this celestial spirit formation, whether it is attack or defense, it can be more powerful than ordinary attack and defense. Although he can only carry out the first sacrificial refining, but after his powerful spiritual awareness exploration and accurate judgment of his own strength, the power of spiritual power attack and defense is at least 30% higher than the original. In other words, only the first of the 36 spiritual power threads has such a powerful power. Then once the Celestial Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art Sacrificial refining to the 36th layer, how many times more powerful will it be? 10 times and 80%? The wish was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. Even though Yang Chen had entered the middle stage of the Qi refining stage, he still couldn't complete the second layer of the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art. In addition to successfully upgrading the first layer to the intermediate level, the second layer was always blocked after a while, unable to proceed. Left with no choice, Yang Chen could only stop trying bitterly. The Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Art did not work, so Yang Chen immediately turned to the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Art. The 72 layers of Earthly Fiend Formation could also raise the quality of magic treasures. However, back then, Yang Chen's cultivation base was too low and he was unable to do it. Now that he had raised his cultivation base by one layer, he could give it a try. The result was unexpectedly good. Under the sacrificial refining of the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Art, the flying sword successfully engraved the first layer of the Earthly Fiend Formation on the flying sword. However, the current Yang Chen was still a bit reluctant to carry out the first layer of the sacrificial refining. When it was completed, he was sweating all over, and the spiritual power of his whole body was exhausted. It even consumed the spiritual power of 1,000-years-old profound Yang fruit of Yang Chen. This was the effect that Yang Chen had been sitting on the underground spiritual vein. However, although the process was hard, the achievement was crazy. The flying sword directly flashed with rays of treasure light. At a glance, one could tell that it was not an ordinary item. However, such a change made Yang Chen a little dumbfounded. The improvement of the magic treasure was a good thing, but this kind of sharpness was not what he liked now. Unfortunately, this was not under Yang Chen's control. Yang Chen knew that only when the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art and the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Art were all sacrificial refined, the magic treasure that had been sacrificial refined would be restrained and become a real peerless magic treasure. The changes of the flying sword certainly made Yang Chen happy, but the changes of the spiritual power in his body made Yang Chen even more ecstatic. As Yang Chen expected, when Yang Chen completed the first layer of the sacrificial refining of the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Art, the spiritual power of each attribute in his body, after the previous division of the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art, was subdivided again. This time, it became 108 threads. The Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art was still the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art, but there was also an Earth Fiend formation. It was just that the two formations did not affect each other and existed independently. They could not be completely integrated into a complete Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art. But even so, the changes in his body were enough to make Yang Chen ecstatic. He immediately began to replenish his spiritual power, and then the first thing he did was to test his attack power. The unlucky underground spirit beast that was stuck at the entrance of the cave became the most pitiful test subject. It could not move and could only watch as Yang Chen's attack fell on its body. Then, after being hit a dozen times in a row, it died, leaving behind 2 spiritual essence. According to Yang Chen's original method of killing high-level spirit beasts, there would be 5 spiritual essence left, but now there were only 2. After a few attacks, Yang Chen knew how much his attack power had increased. Like the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art, each layer increased the power by 30%. According to this calculation, if he could completely sacrificial refine the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art, he could at least increase the power by 324%, which was close to 32 times of Yang Chen's without sacrificial refining. This was only the completion of the sacrificial refining of the Heavenly Spirit Treasure refining secret art. If it could be combined into a complete Heavenly Spirit Treasure refining secret art, there would definitely be a bigger surprise. Yang Chen, who has 10,000 years of cultivation experience in his previous life, naturally knows the truth that more haste, less speed. Anyway, it was already a surprise to have such an effect now, and Yang Chen would not be greedy for too much. However, after full preparation, the profound spirit furnace and the sword box were taken out separately, and the first sacrificial refining of the Earth Fiend's sacrificial formation secret art was carried out. With the experience of the first sacrificial refining of the flying sword, the sacrificial refining of the profound spirit furnace and the flying sword was very smooth, and it was not as hard as the first sacrificial refining, but the effect was better than the first sacrificial refining of the flying sword with the Earth Fiend sacrificial formation secret art. After the completion of the sword box, Yang Chen also began a new way to kill the spirit beast. Anyway, Yang Chen has already accumulated 50,000 spiritual essence, enough for his own immortal's cave to use in the future. Obtaining the spiritual essence is no longer the first goal of Yang Chen. What Yang Chen has to do now is to kill the underground spirit beast by beheading it. This method is most in line with the immortal beheading method in the immortal beheading stage, and it can also stimulate the will of the immortal beheading stage to integrate with himself. At the moment, Yang Chen didn't waste time. He waved the sword box in the shape of the immortal beheading stage, raised it high, and slashed it down, and began his new round of killing the underground spirit beast. With a sharp weapon in hand, the efficiency was higher than the bare-handed attack. With just 3 knives, Yang Chen cut off the head of the underground spirit beast stuck in the hole. Chapter 121. Yang Chen was still unable to use the flying sword to kill through the air. It couldn't be helped, his level was too low. Even though he had entered the 4th layer of Qi training, the flying sword technique could still only last a few strikes. Any more and his spiritual power would be exhausted. Using the flying sword technique to kill the underground spirit beasts was powerful and fast. Unfortunately, before killing 3, he had to sit down and recover his spiritual power. Yang Chen didn't need to break through his spiritual power, but to integrate the killing intent of the immortal beheading platform as soon as possible, so he didn't need to use this method. Holding the sword box in the shape of the immortal beheading sword in his hand, the underground spirit beasts rushed in crazily and were stuck. It was the same posture as when Yang Chen was beheading in the execution field. Using the most familiar posture, Yang Chen slashed down again and again, 3 slashes for 1 spirit beast. After killing a spirit beast, there would immediately be a follow-up spirit beast rushing in to replace it, almost without stopping. The Yin-Yang 5 elemental secret art, under the effect of the immortal beheading sword, cut into the body of the underground spirit beast. No matter what kind of spirit beast it was, the spiritual power in its body would be exhausted in a few slashes. Yang Chen could easily cut off the head of the spirit beast. Even if it wasn't a highly intelligent creature, the underground spirit beast had, after all, developed a spiritual sense. Every knife cut down, there was a feeling of Yang Chen killing a creature. In the same way, the killing intent in his body was also a bit more, and the murderous aura on his body was also a bit more. The will of the immortal beheading platform was the most direct manifestation of killing. When Yang Chen felt completely in sync with the immortal beheading platform, the fierce will also rushed out of Yang Chen's body and began to integrate with Yang Chen's killing intent. Every time he killed a spirit beast, Yang Chen seemed to be able to feel that there was something more in his temperament. It was like an executioner, not asking for the reason, not asking for the result, just the kind of decisive cut with a knife. As for Yang Chen himself, it seemed that he had become a bit more aggressive. The crazy killing intent even frightened the underground spirit beasts outside, and they no longer dared to enter. Every time at this time, Yang Chen had to stop and restore his spiritual power while using the 3 purities secret art to completely absorb his almost overflowing killing intent. His daily life had become a cycle of killing and cultivation. It was dull and boring, and there was not even the slightest thrill or excitement. He could even kill tens of thousands of underground spirit beasts in a day. Sometimes, Yangchen even wondered if he should rush out into the underground spiritual beasts and risk his life to vent his anger. However, the calmness he had cultivated in his past life for 10,000 years made him restrain himself. What he needed right now was not to vent his anger, but to steadily increase his strength, hide some of the monstrous performances in the eyes of others, and then be able to become a disciple of his master again. Compared to this goal, everything else was not worth mentioning. Thinking of his master's eyes, Yangchen couldn't help but cheer up again. It was another long period of killing. Yangchen didn't know how long it had been. Anyway, he could feel that the will of the immortal executioner stage in his body, after experiencing the killing of millions of underground spirit beasts, was finally completely stimulated. Boom, like a god of death, in the immortal falling abyss, suddenly flashed endless killing intent. The people in the entire immortal falling abyss seemed to feel this terrifying will. The will that could make the Jade Emperor tremble in fear directly scared all the creatures in the immortal falling abyss into fainting. Even the masters of the Yuanying and Deshang stages were no exception. The only one who could stand soberly was Yangchen. In the place close to Yangchen, the underground spirit beasts that only knew how to act by instinct were directly attacked by the killing intent. Within a radius of tens of feet, it was originally crowded with spirit beasts, but now there was only a large piece of spirit marrow left, and there was nothing else. This was not the kind of killing intent that Yangchen had when he first came out of the immortal executioner stage, but the crazy killing intent that the immortal executioner stage had accumulated from the creatures it had killed since its existence. The fierce beast imprisoned in Yangchen's body finally released its boundless pressure and began to completely integrate with Yangchen. The spiritual power in Yangchen's body seemed to be driven by a great force and began to circulate at a high speed in his body. His body seemed to have become a huge black hole, crazily absorbing the spiritual power of the underground spirit vein. The speed at which the spiritual power was pouring in even made Yangchen feel a burst of fear. Fortunately, the yin and yang reversal 5 elements could effectively refine spiritual power, so Yangchen's body did not explode from the sudden influx of spiritual power. The spiritual power of the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art and the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art, driven by the killing intent, began to grow wildly. And the killing intent once again began to go crazy in Yangchen's mind. Obey me. Obey me. With the experience in the immortal executioner stage, Yangchen was able to deal with it easily. In his mind, the eyes of his master in his previous life flashed, and the happy scene of his master giving him the bright ray sword, Yangchen's face even showed a smile again. I have said many times, I am the executioner. In the face of the will of the immortal executioner stage, Yangchen just smiled, firm and unwavering, letting the will of the immortal executioner stage be stimulated by his killing intent in the outside world to the final madness. Soon, unable to subdue Yangchen, the will of the immortal executioner stage could only choose to be subdued by Yangchen. Bit by bit, it began to completely integrate into Yangchen's mind, becoming a part of Yangchen. The familiar dark red aura once again appeared around Yangchen's body, and the red and black blood mist was very eye-catching under the illumination of the night pearl. When all the killing intent completely integrated into Yangchen, there was a bang, and the spiritual power in Yangchen's body changed dramatically again. Originally, he had already entered the 4th Qi refining layer, and with the unique cultivation environment, coupled with these days of non-stop cultivation, Yangchen's cultivation had already accumulated enough. The killing intent stimulated the spiritual power, and it immediately rose again, quickly entering the 5th Qi refining layer. During the process of merging with the killing intent, the bottleneck of the 5th Qi refining layer was once again broken through. Under the crazy driving of the killing intent, the spiritual power crazily climbed, and in the blink of an eye, it broke through the 6th Qi refining layer and rushed into the 7th Qi refining layer. Only after breaking through the 7th Qi refining layer did the crazy spiritual power slowly calm down, and it was no longer as violent as it was before. Just breaking through 3 levels of checkpoints in a row even made Yang Chen's meridians have some severe pain. At this moment, Yang Chen couldn't care about anything else, and immediately rushed to the black jade praying mat, and began to repair his meridians and consolidate his cultivation. Elder Wu Xiong, who was in charge of the falling immortal abyss, was the first to wake up, but he had been unconscious for a full day and night. But when he woke up, he found that a biting cold killing intent filled the air. The killing intent was so strong that even Elder Wu Xiong felt fear from the bottom of his heart. He wanted to check it out, but he discovered that under the suppression of this killing intent, he couldn't even move a muscle. Chapter 122. Immortal Falling Abyss. Is there going to be an earth-shaking disaster? Elder Wu Xiong did not dare to make a judgment. He could only feel the killing intent pervading everywhere. He could only hold on, but there was nothing he could do. In Yang Chen's plan, he would build the foundation within 10 years and improve 1 level a year on average, so that he would not appear to be an evildoer. At the same time, he was also a rare genius in refining qi and could be valued by the sect. However, after climbing to the top of the heaven stairway, Yang Chen knew that the sect had attached great importance to it. Naturally, there was not much meaning in hiding it. In terms of cultivation, Yang Chen also began to let nature take its course, but he did not expect that in order to integrate the killing intent of the immortal beheading stage in the immortal falling abyss, he could be stimulated by the killing intent to upgrade 3 levels in a row, directly from the 4th level of the intermediate qi refining stage to the 7th level of the advanced qi refining stage. Counting the days, it was only a year and he had upgraded 3 levels. This speed, even if it was a genius, was a bit shocking. It took Yang Chen a full 10 days to consolidate his realm and repair the damage to his meridians. During this time, the thick killing intent had been permeating around his body. Among the creatures in the immortal falling abyss, only Yang Chen and Elder Wu Xiong who woke up later were awake. Yang Chen knew the scourge of the killing intent outside his body. After consolidating his realm, he hurriedly began to cultivate the 3 purities secret art. The 2nd level of the 3 purities secret art was unparalleled in terms of absorbing the killing intent. It only took less than 6 hours to absorb all the bloody mist that covered a radius of dozens of feet. This was the killing intent accumulated by the immortal beheading stage. It was not known how many immortals had been killed by the immortal beheading stage. It was completely transformed into Yang Chen's spiritual awareness. In the process of transformation, Yang Chen felt his spiritual awareness surging, and even had a feeling of disbelief. Originally, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness had already reached the peak of the foundation stage, and now it was still rising, accumulating and beginning to hit the barrier of the Jiedan stage. Even if it was a knowledgeable person, it was impossible to believe that Yang Chen was now a disciple of the qi refining stage, but his spiritual awareness had already reached the realm of the Jiedan stage. Boom! Under the continuous impact of the divine sense, a sudden roar sounded in Yang Chen's mind. Then, Yang Chen felt his whole body shake, as if he had suddenly appeared in a bloody world. Yang Chen knew that this was the sea of consciousness that was opened after his spiritual sense entered the golden core realm. Generally speaking, as long as one's sea of consciousness was opened, then one would truly have the hope of condensing a core. However, after Yang Chen absorbed the will of the immortal slaying platform, he directly took this step. Originally, the 3 purities secret art was the role of condensing the spiritual awareness and expanding the sea of consciousness. Now that the sea of consciousness has been successfully opened, but the killing intent has not yet been absorbed. Continue to absorb and refine, and in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, it also began to change slowly. The bloody world was filled with smoke, as if all the killing intent outside his body was concentrated here. But very quickly, the blood-colored mist began to slowly gather, then converged into a blood-colored river, and began to flow on the blood-colored ground. The entire sea of consciousness also began to slowly fade, and it seemed that all the blood color began to converge in the river. In the empty sea of consciousness, there was only such a bloody river formed, and there was no other scenery. But Yang Chen was already ecstatic. In his previous life, when he had just formed the sea of knowledge, it was just a white mist, as small as a shabby room. How could he open up such a huge sea of knowledge with a blood-red river in one go? The Three Purities Secret Art was the Three Purities Secret Art. At this time, Yangchen also had to sigh at the strength of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's cultivation method. It was just strange. How could such a powerful Tao ancestor be captured by the Profound Heaven sect and sent to the immortal slaying platform? This strange sea of consciousness, Yangchen knew that this was the initial stage of the Tai Ching realm, the lowest of the three realms of the sea of consciousness of the Three Purities Secret Art. This was just the opening of the sea of consciousness. There was still a long way to go from the real Tai Ching realm. But since there was this good start, does Yangchen still need to worry about his future cultivation? With a long breath of satisfaction, the spiritual awareness withdrew from the sea of consciousness, and Yangchen also completely woke up. This time, the integration of the will of the immortal slaying platform was simply a surprise. At this point, the killing intent that pervaded the immortal falling abyss was swept away. Without the explosive killing intent, the creatures in the immortal falling abyss slowly woke up. Those with high cultivation bases, when they woke up, they found that there were hundreds of unconscious spirit beasts around, and they were overjoyed. No matter what, they had to kill these spirit beasts that came to their door and take the spirit marrow. Fortunately, those who could enter the immortal falling abyss were basically approved by the heads of the various sects, so they couldn't find anything. Although the time to wake up was fast and slow, after all, it was still faster than the underground spirit beasts. Otherwise, the immortal falling abyss would have lost more than half of the trial disciples today. Even so, no one knew why they were unconscious, and even Elder Wuxia, who had been guarding the immortal falling abyss all this time, didn't know the reason. The disciples who woke up only knew to take the spirit marrow first. Yangchen was also no exception. He completely released his spiritual awareness, and the scene within a few hundred feet around him was clear at a glance. There were scattered spirit marrow and unconscious underground spirit beasts everywhere. Of course, Yangchen wouldn't let this opportunity go. He directly rushed out of the cave, and then first cleaned up the surroundings, wantonly plundering at least 10,000 pieces of spirit marrow. Only then did he happily return to the cave, find a spirit beast to plug the cave entrance, and then began to examine the changes in his body again. Yangchen could accurately judge the 7th stage of qi refining, but the current qi refining 7th stage was completely different from the qi refining 7th stage of his previous life. With the powerful yin-yang 5 elements secret art, the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art, and the earth fiend formation art, the current Yangchen could beat tens of Yangchen of the same level from his previous life. Almost out of habit, Yangchen took out a flying sword from the sword case and began to refine it. The heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art passed the 2nd stage of the sacrificial refining almost without any hindrance. In just 2 hours, the flying sword quickly improved by a grade. The sword body was shining brightly, very pleasing. Similarly, the earth fiend formation art passed the 2nd stage without any hindrance, and even rushed to the 3rd stage. Among the spirit power threads in his body, the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art had a trace of light, and the earth fiend formation art also had 2 more traces. Moreover, what made Yangchen pleasantly surprised was that the spirit power threads, which were originally as thin as silk, had now become as thick as a thin needle, becoming more and more condensed. In front of Yangchen's eyes, the beautiful eyes of his master from his previous life flashed, and in an instant, it turned into his master's smiling face. Yangchen, this bright ray sword is specially refined by me for you. You take it and diligently practice. The slender jade finger in Yangchen's mind was constantly enlarged and gradually filled all of Yangchen's memories. Master, I will soon be able to build the foundation, and soon I can return to your side and become your disciple. Chapter 123. The profound spirit furnace was a magic weapon that Yangchen cared about the most. This was a good thing that could be used in the immortal world in the future. Yangchen would definitely take good care of it. Of course, the celestial spirit treasure refining secret art would not be missed. It could improve the grade of the profound spirit furnace. This kind of good thing, Yangchen would never neglect the profound spirit furnace. Under the control of Yangchen, The majestic spiritual power was sacrificially refined inside and outside the profound spirit furnace. Yang Chen's sacrificial refining was very attentive, and even the defects in the profound spirit furnace could be clearly explored with spiritual awareness. With the relationship of recognizing the owner and sacrificial refining, Yang Chen's powerful spiritual awareness, which was already comparable to the middle Jiedan stage, directly penetrated the interior of the profound spirit furnace and saw the structure and defects inside clearly. Although the sacrificial refining of the celestial spirit treasure refining secret art was very successful, Yang Chen still felt that there were some shortcomings in the ointment. The level of the fire attribute spiritual power was too low, and there was no suitable fire seed and materials. Some of the defects that could be obviously seen could not be made up, which made Yang Chen very regretful. It seemed that it was necessary to focus on improving his own fire attribute spiritual power. Yang Chen was originally a fire attribute innate spirit root. His previous realm was low, and he had already declared that in order to understand the characteristics of other attributes, he had been in contact with all 5 elements. But now that the level of refining qi was getting higher, Yang Chen also had to consider that he had to highlight his own fire attribute cultivation base, otherwise he would definitely let countless guys look sideways. There was a good opportunity at the moment. Yang Chen knew that in this immortal fallen abyss, there was an underground fire vein. The earth core fire was the yin fire, 4th fire, that was needed for alchemy. After collecting it, not only could the profound spirit furnace be upgraded again, but Yang Chen's fire attribute cultivation base would also be more outstanding. After the celestial spirit treasure refining secret art, it was the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art, which was followed by the universe treasure raising secret art. The luxurious sacrificial refining method and the luxurious maintenance technique, not to mention the same level of magic weapon, even if it was a higher grade magic weapon than the profound spirit furnace, if the magic weapon had a spirit, it was estimated that it would be dwarfed and overshadowed. After refining the sword case in the same way, Yang Chen reached out and took out the purified bottle from the Xianxia mountain herb garden that had absorbed all the spiritual power. The earth flame was in the other direction of Separation Village. It was time to leave. However, when Yang Chen was about to receive the purified bottle, he was taken aback. The medicinal garden bottle and bottle cap were originally very high-level magical weapons. With Yang Chen's current level, before he reached the foundation establishment stage, Yang Chen didn't even think about sacrificially refining them. Even if he had the heavenly spirit treasure refining art and the earth fiend sacrificial formation art, it was still the same. Now that the medicine garden was only marked by Yang Chen's spiritual consciousness, it would no longer harm Yang Chen. Originally, in Xianxia Mountain, the medicine garden's purified bottle only had a thin trace of spiritual power left. When collecting the senior's sword case, the purified bottle completely absorbed the small underground spiritual vein, but it only added a layer as thick as a finger. But now, the purified bottle had absorbed full of spiritual power. The whole purified bottle exuded a soul-stirring aqua blue color. Holding it in his hand, it was like a crystal-clear ice cube. Not only that, but the lid of the purified bottle also seemed to be full of spiritual power, emitting a burst of golden light. This change was unexpected for Yang Chen. He originally thought that the bottle cap used the spiritual power of the purified bottle, but now he discovered that it could be separated separately. Obviously, just by looking at the color, it could be seen that the sword array of the bottle cap was of the metal attribute. This was an unexpected surprise. At the very least, Yang Chen wouldn't have to worry about the spiritual power of the medicine garden for decades or even hundreds of years. In the future, as long as he could sacrificial refine it, he might be able to let the medicine garden absorb a variety of spiritual objects of the 5 elements and form a 5-element world in the medicine garden. At that time, he could not only cultivate the medicinal herbs planted in the medicine garden now. There was no time limit for cultivation. When he really ascended, he would have fresh medicinal herbs that were hundreds or thousands of years old. Naturally, he would have a great advantage. The underground spirit vein that was full of spiritual power had been frantically absorbed by Yang Chen over the past 2 years. In addition to the absorption of the purified bottle in the medicine garden, it was now much weaker. However, the immortal fall abyss was underground, so it would naturally recover slowly. Yang Chen didn't realize that he had taken advantage of the fellow Daoist who had discovered this place later. He reluctantly used the light of the pearl in his hand to take one last look at this place that seemed like a cheat. Then he left without any reluctance. The direction of Separation Village could be found through the reaction of the pearl in his hand. Apart from emitting light, the pearl could also guide the people who came here to train back to Separation Village. As long as they followed the direction marked on the pearl, they could easily reach their destination. As he walked, Yang Chen counted the spiritual essence he had obtained. These days he had been either killing or cultivating day and night, so Yang Chen hadn't had the chance to count his spoils of war. With this number, Yang Chen himself was almost shocked. After killing millions of underground spirit beasts, Yang Chen actually had tens of millions of spiritual essence in his hands. What did tens of millions of spiritual essence mean? 50,000 pieces of 5-element spiritual essence could increase the speed of spiritual qi gushing out by about 1 unit. This speed of spiritual qi gushing out was equivalent to 1% of the speed of spiritual qi gushing out of the spirit vein in Chunyang Palace on Meiqing Mountain. Even if there were only 10 million pieces of spiritual essence, it was equivalent to expanding the spirit vein by 200 units. This meant that the current exit of the spirit vein in Chunyang Palace could be expanded by 2 times. This also meant that the concentration of spiritual power in Meiqing Mountain would be 2 times stronger than before, which was 3 times stronger than before. After this trip, if Yang Chen took out all the spiritual essence, it could almost be said that Chunyang Palace would be able to turn around immediately. The foundation of a sect was indispensable. Now, Yang Chen could almost improve the land of Chunyang Palace by 2 levels almost by himself. Everyone knew what the effect would be if a person from a sect occupied the spiritual power resources of 3 sections. Even a disciple at the peak of Foundation Establishment realm could not get so much spiritual essence after staying in Li Luo Abyss for 10 years. That was to say, Yang Chen found such a cheat-like way. He slightly converted the bloody scene in his sea of consciousness into a little killing intent and spread it around his body. None of the underground spirit beasts dared to approach him. After killing millions of underground spirit beasts, Yang Chen naturally had a kind of oppressive aura like a natural enemy to these underground spirit beasts. None of the spirit beasts dared to take the initiative to approach him. Originally, it took him less than 7 days to walk against the spirit beasts for half a month. He felt that Li Luo village was already about a day's journey away. Suddenly, the ground in front of him lit up with a pearl light. This was the pearl light given by Li Luo village, which was the same as the pearl light given by Yang Chen. A person's voice almost instantly reached Yang Chen's ears. Haha, I didn't wait for you for a year and a half in vain. I've finally waited for you. Yang Chen. Chapter 124. This voice was somewhat familiar, but Yang Chen was startled for a moment before recalling that it was Jin Tao's voice. Jin Tao had been planted with an inner demon by the Soul Shaker art. Logically speaking, without the help of an expert, he shouldn't have been able to wake up. Why had he waited here for a year and a half? Jin Tao, aren't you afraid of being discovered by Elder Wu? Although Jin Tao had shouted for Yang Chen to die, he didn't immediately make a move. He must have had some misgivings. Yang Chen didn't take this to heart and directly pointed it out. In the past, you naturally couldn't kill people in Immortal Falling Abyss. But now, Jin Tao coldly snorted, I don't know where the ominous demon has appeared, but Elder Wu has already gone to the depths of the Immortal Fallen Abyss to investigate. So, it's normal for some trial disciples to have some mishaps, isn't it? In other words, there won't be any trouble killing people here? Yang Chen wasn't afraid of trouble, but if he could avoid it, he naturally wouldn't meddle. So, prepare to be executed. No one will find out that you've been killed except me. Jin Tao's face clearly carried a sinister smile and a trace of anger. Who would have thought that I, Jin Tao, an expert at the peak of the Foundation Establishment stage, would be fooled by a mere Qi condensation stage junior like you? If it weren't for Elder Wu noticing, I would still be muddle-headed. Jin Tao's anger also made Yang Chen understand why Jin Tao, who had planted an inner demon in his heart, was so clear-headed and had waited for him for a year and a half. So it was Wu Xiong who had made a move. But since Wu Xiong was an elder in charge of Immortal Falling Abyss, it was normal for him to save a disciple who was in a bad state of mind. It wasn't worth making a fuss about. You made me a laughingstock in Immortal Falling Abyss for a year. I will grind your bones to ashes to appease the hatred in my heart, Jin Tao said fiercely. He was a proud person, so this kind of thing was simply a great humiliation to him. In particular, he clearly knew that it was Yang Chen who made the move, but he could not make it public. If others found out that he was plotted against by a junior in the Qi condensation stage, he would be even more embarrassed. Yes, in Jin Tao's heart, Yang Chen must have plotted against him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so depressed. He was not clear about other things, but this Qi refinement realm junior in front of him was a second revolution pill master. Maybe he had used some kind of vicious poison to plot against him. In a face-to-face situation, Jin Tao knew that even 10 Yang Chen would not be able to do anything to him. Of course, Yang Chen would not easily believe Jin Tao's words. He released his divine sense and began to observe the surrounding movements. Yang Chen only wanted to know what was going on. If he didn't take the initiative to investigate, his divine sense could even cover a radius of a few hundred feet. The result of the investigation made Yang Chen very satisfied. Apart from himself and Jin Tao, there was indeed no one else in the surroundings except for the underground spirit beasts. After taking back the bloody killing intent that formed a pressure on the underground spirit beast, Yang Chen smiled at Jin Tao on the opposite side. Jin Tao, every injustice has its source, every debt has its debtor. Without waiting for Yang Chen to finish his sentence, Jin Tao interrupted and said with a sinister smile, "That's right, every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor." Strictly speaking, it was martial nephew Han Jian of the Tianquan sect who was in the wrong. He took the initiative to provoke and even fought to the death, so he deserved to die. However, as a cultivator, if we were to pay attention to this, then what's the point of living? This is the principle of helping one's kin and not reason. Don't be resentful, this world is just so unfair. Thank you for your guidance, Senior Jin. Jin Tao's words seemed to make Yang Chen somewhat enlightened, and for the first time, he said a word of thanks to his enemy. What guidance? Jin Tao stood rooted to the ground, not understanding what Yang Chen meant by, every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor. The first is because of what Senior said, helping one's kin and not reason. I've learned my lesson. Yang Chen cupped his hands and thanked Jin Tao, causing Jin Tao's expression to turn ugly. If there's the first, then there's the second. What's the second? At this moment, Jin Tao was actually attracted by Yang Chen's words and couldn't help but ask curiously. The second is to thank Senior Apprentice Brother for telling me that there will be no big problem in killing people here. Yang Chen still replied in a serious manner. Hearing Yang Chen's reply, Jin Tao was stunned for a moment before he started laughing maniacally. He pointed at Yang Chen with one hand and clutched his stomach with the other. He couldn't stand up for a long time, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Ha! After laughing for a long time, Jin Tao straightened up and said with a serious expression, "This is the funniest joke I've ever heard in my life. Fine, I'll show you the difference between foundation establishment and Qi condensation." After saying that, a sword light suddenly flew up from the back of Jin Tao's head. Then, it transformed into a snow-white flying sword that slowly stopped in front of Jin Tao. Don't think that just because you killed a few Qi condensation juniors that you're a big deal. Jin Tao's cold words were squeezed out of his gums. With a point of his finger, the flying sword turned into a streak of light that shot towards Yang Chen. Opposite him, Yang Chen's body strangely blurred and disappeared without a trace. Jin Tao didn't seem surprised at this. With a flash of light, the sword began to dance around his body. An escape technique? So you're already at the 8th layer of Qi condensation. No wonder you're so arrogant. Jin Tao sneered and pointed at the ground, shouting, "Break for me!" On the ground where Jin Tao's finger was pointing, a huge hole suddenly appeared. With a flash of light, the sword disappeared into the crack in the ground. Ding 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 ding. A series of collisions rang out from the ground. Jin Tao's eyes widened in disbelief as he listened to the series of collisions. What is this? How can it block my flying sword? Jin Tao was truly shocked. He didn't think that the flying sword that he had carefully refined would be blocked by something that Yang Chen didn't know. This was definitely not something that a qi condensation cultivator could take out. While he was shocked, he also revealed a happy expression. After I kill you, all of these things will be mine. I think you should be wondering why the surrounding underground spirit beasts haven't attacked us after so long. Yang Chen's figure did not appear, but his words could be heard from all directions. Hearing Yang Chen's words, Jin Tao was also shocked. Only now did he notice the abnormality in his surroundings. He had been so absorbed in the joy of waiting for Yang Chen that he didn't notice this obvious abnormality. What's going on? He had already discovered that there were already tens of underground spirit beasts surrounding them. If he didn't withdraw his flying sword, it seemed that he would have no choice but to fight with these underground spirit beasts. Just as he was hesitating, he suddenly heard Yang Chen's words. You want to kill me with this level of skill? Dream on. Dream on. The moment these three words entered Jin Tao's ears, it was as if a wave of emotions that had been buried deep in his heart had been stirred up. He immediately began to go crazy. Chapter 125. Last time, when Yang Chen used the God-shaking technique, the last three most important words were, dream on. Now, Yang Chen yelled out these three words again, and he still used the God-shaking technique in the Three Purities secret art to shout it out, which made Jin Tao fall into a trance again. The God-shaking technique, after all, was the spell in the Three Purities secret art given by the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. Even if Elder Wu Xiong had awakened Jin Tao from that depression, there was still a trace of heart demon hidden deep in Jin Tao's subconscious that could not be completely solved. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness has now broken through to the realm of the middle Jidan stage, and it was more powerful than when he first used the God-shaking technique. The same sentence directly made the trace of heart demon in the depths of Jin Tao's heart go crazy again, and Jin Tao could no longer control the attack smoothly. The most terrible thing was that at this time, the surrounding underground spirit beasts had discovered the threat. Their killing intent had completely disappeared, and they rushed up fiercely. Even in a trance, Jin Tao instinctively felt the threat of the underground spirit beasts. The flying sword, which was originally attacking Yang Chen in the underground, flew out of the ground in an instant and began to fly around Jin Tao's body, attacking the spirit beasts that rushed over. Jin Tao was flustered. He was unprecedentedly flustered. He didn't even know why he was so distracted at this critical moment. All he knew was that he was doing his best to resist the underground spirit beasts from all directions. Not to mention killing them, it was already a great result for him to be able to resist their attacks. The more flustered he was, the more he remembered Yang Chen's reminder, the more he remembered that there was a Yang Chen who disappeared in the underground. It was a pity that although Jin Tao was at the peak of the foundation stage, he was not of the earth attribute. Earth escape, he could not use it at all. Moreover, he was underground. Even if he wanted to escape with the flying sword, he could only resist. On the surface of Jin Tao's body, an armor had appeared. It seemed to be a magic weapon refined by Jin Tao. There were several attacks from the underground spirit beasts that dodged the flying sword, and their claws grabbed the armor fiercely, flashing a burst of sparks. It seemed like the protective magic treasure had a pretty good effect, but Jin Tao's face did not have that kind of complacency at all. There was only panic and fear. His strength at the peak of the building foundation stage and his ability to crush Yang Chen into ashes were all insignificant in front of a large group of underground spiritual beasts and when his own life was threatened. Right now, in Jin Tao's heart, there was nothing else but fear and regret. Moreover, regret occupied the majority of his heart. He was a dignified expert at the peak of the foundation establishment realm who was about to condense his core and become a Grand Master. How could he be possessed and want to stand up for that good-for-nothing disciple of his own sect? When Han Jianda was in the 6th layer of Qi training, he insisted on playing a life-and-death game with a junior in the 3rd layer of Qi training. If news of this got out, he would become a laughingstock, not to mention that he was killed instead. It was a fair and above-board challenge to the death. Life and death did not matter, and they were not allowed to pursue the matter afterwards. But Jin Tao himself made a somersault. When he heard the name of Yang Chen in the Chunyang Palace, he had to be embarrassed. Not only was his weakness seized by others, his little trick was seen through, and Yang Chen planted an inner demon in him. It was reasonable to say that when Jin Tao woke up, he should know the danger and not touch Yang Chen again. But because of the injustice in his heart, he wanted to get back at Yang Chen, and now he fell into such a situation. But now it was too late to regret. Not only was he attacked by the underground spirit beasts, but there was also Yang Chen in the dark, eyeing him covetously. "Junior brother Yang, I'm joking with you. Don't misunderstand." At the moment of life and death, Jin Tao could no longer pretend to be a hero and shouted loudly at the people around him. His control of the flying sword was becoming weaker and weaker. He wanted to leave, but he knew that Yang Chen would not let him go so easily. He could only give in and hope that Yang Chen would be soft-hearted and let him go. Judging from Yang Chen's method of making him lose confidence at the beginning, this was very likely. "I really want to let senior brother Jin go. Unfortunately, senior brother Jin should not have told me that it doesn't matter if I kill someone here." Yang Chen's voice came from all directions. It was impossible to tell where he was at all. The only thing that could be confirmed was that he was monitoring Jin Tao's movements at all times. Although Jin Tao did not know why the underground spirit beasts did not take the initiative to attack Yang Chen, he could not care less at this moment. He turned around and left, activating his protective magic treasure to the maximum. Even if he was attacked by the spirit beasts a few times, he did not care. He only hoped to escape and return to Separation Village. Future matters could be dealt with later. His plan was sound, but unfortunately, Yang Chen would never give him the chance to do so. "If you don't kill a snake, you will be harmed." Yang Chen knew this very well before he was reborn. He would never make such a mistake now. Jin Tao, who was madly rushing out, suddenly felt the pressure in front of him lighten. He had rushed out of the underground spirit beast circle and there was nothing in front of him. Seeing this, Jin Tao was overjoyed. Just as he was about to rush forward, his vision blurred and a figure suddenly appeared from the ground. It was as if the figure had been standing there all along and Jin Tao had crashed into it. With a single thought, the flying sword that was dancing around Jin Tao was about to give Yang Chen a fatal blow. However, he suddenly felt a wave of confusion. In that instant, Jin Tao saw Yang Chen's hand suddenly wave up and a bright light flashed. Immediately after, he felt a cool sensation on his neck and his entire body relaxed. It was as if he was no longer affected by Yang Chen's words. His entire body felt relaxed like never before. Then, Jin Tao felt that he had risen a lot and his body seemed to be spinning involuntarily. When he saw the headless corpse standing under the dim light of the luminous pearl, Jin Tao finally understood what had happened. At this moment, a horrified expression appeared on his face. In the next moment, a glimmer of hope appeared in the eyes of the flying head. The flying sword's bright sword light had already reached Yang Chen's side. In the blink of an eye, it would pierce into Yang Chen's body. Although he would die, it would be satisfying to die together with Yang Chen. However, the dream was Lin Jiling, but the reality was Luo Yufeng. The last thing Jin Tao saw was Yang Chen reaching out with one hand and directly grabbing the flying sword light. It was as easy as grabbing a bug. With a heart full of regret and unwillingness, Jin Tao finally closed his eyes. Yang Chen held the masterless flying sword in his hand. He looked at Jin Tao and shook his head without saying anything. It was originally a happy thing to increase his level, but there was such a person who spoiled the fun. Did he really think that he was afraid of killing people? Chapter 126. The Qinkuan bag, the armor on his body, Yang Chen did not let go of any of them. It was rare that Jin Tao thought about it thoroughly. He found a very secret place to wait, and it was far enough away from the village, so that Yang Chen could feel at ease and boldly do things like killing and robbing without any psychological burden. A windfall that came to his door, he did not want it. In the Qinkuan bag, there were only 7 or 8,000 pieces of spiritual marrow, plus 100 or 10 kilograms of low-grade spirit stones, so that Yang Chen could not help but despise the poor ghost. In addition to the spiritual marrow, there were some collected medicines. Looking at a few of them, it seemed to be the prescription for refining the yin-yang nature pill. This was the most common auxiliary medicine used when the foundation building stage condensed the pill. Jin Tao's peak foundation building strength could be used immediately, but unfortunately, it was all cheap to Yang Chen. The quality of the flying sword was good, but it was only good. Compared to the few flying swords left by the predecessors in Yang Chen's sword case, it was still a little worse. He put it directly in the sword case. Maybe it would be useful in the future. However, the protective armor was made of good materials. After Yang Chen collected the earth fire, he might be able to refine and supplement some small defects of the profound spirit furnace. It was better than nothing. Whether it was the flying sword or the protective armor, it was impossible for Yang Chen to use it without any changes. There was a stack of talismans, which he did not know was prepared for the younger generation. It could probably be exchanged for some spirit stones, so he threw it into the Qiankuan bag first. In addition to these, there were some materials from the black iron pure gold here. It seemed that he planned to continue to temper the flying sword. Yang Chen was also not polite, and directly threw it into his own merit ring. What he was most interested in were the few pieces of jade slips. One was the water attribute cultivation method of the Tianquan sect, which was practiced after the foundation building stage, ochre in water mysterious technique. Yang Chen had heard of this cultivation method. It was also a cultivation method of the Tianquan sect with a long enough name. It just happened to be able to replace Yang Chen's gui water cultivation method. It was Yang Chen's luck that he had the cultivation technique. Under normal circumstances, the cultivation technique would be memorized in his mind. It was impossible for him to leave a jade slip. It was clear that Jin Tao had intended to help others, but he died before he could succeed, and all of them became Yang Chen's possessions. The jade slip contained the method to create a formation diagram. Yang Chen looked at it but was not very interested. He could give it to Gong Sunling for her to study. The last jade slip was a map. Of course, Yang Chen wouldn't care about an ordinary map. However, there were 3 locations recorded on this map, all of which Yang Chen had heard of before. They were all places where treasures were unearthed. Although Yang Chen had heard a lot of information, it was not as detailed as what was recorded on this map. It seemed that Yang Chen could go and take a look if he had the time. After putting away the items, he threw the Qiankuan bag into his merit ring. Yang Chen had already collected a few similar Qiankuan bags from various sections. When he collected more in the future, Yang Chen could even refine these Qiankuan bags to raise the grade of his own Qiankuan bag. Although the sect's Qiankuan bag was just a decoration with the merit ring, it was still just for show. Yang Chen didn't mind making it a little more advanced. Yang Chen didn't care about Jin Tao's corpse at all. After he left, the underground spirit beasts that swarmed Jin Tao's corpse devoured it cleanly. The corpse of a peak foundation establishment cultivator was simply a great tonic for these spirit beasts. Not even a scrap was left. In the immortal fall abyss, another cultivator had accidentally fallen into the mouths of spirit beasts. Cultivators appeared in groups of 2s and 3s in the market of Separation Village. There was no day or night here. There were always people here at all times. A cultivator walked into the market and wanted to exchange for some spirit herbs. If he could survive outside for one more day, he would be able to obtain more spirit essence. As long as the price of the medicinal pills was right, it was a very worthwhile transaction. After entering the market, the cultivator habitually glanced at the empty spot in the corner. Just like before, it was still empty. Just as he was about to go somewhere else, he saw an unfamiliar figure walking directly in that direction. Under the surprised gaze of the cultivator, the figure directly sat on the empty spot. Then he placed a piece of white cloth in front of him and placed a small jade bottle on top of it. The cultivator was shocked and hurriedly rubbed his eyes. He didn't even dare to believe his own eyes. He directly probed with his spiritual sense. That's right, there was a sitting figure with an ordinary piece of cloth in front of him and a small jade bottle on top of it. A high-level qi refinement cultivator. This was exactly the same as the legendary second-grade alchemist from 2.5 years ago, except for the fact that his cultivation was slightly higher. After the great shock, the cultivator was immediately overjoyed. He almost shouted out loud. Such a good thing actually happened to him. The fellows who were lucky enough to obtain second-grade Qi nourishing pills had relied on 100 Qi nourishing pills to directly obtain 100 more spirit essence. Compared to the price of 10 spirit essence per bottle, it was simply a huge profit. Overjoyed, the cultivator rushed towards the corner like an arrow. However, although he was fast, there were people faster than him. More than a dozen figures, from all directions, directly rushed to the corner like arrows released from a bow. In the blink of an eye, the corner was surrounded by more than a dozen people. The person who appeared was Xianxia, but he still didn't expect that he would be so popular in the immortal falling abyss. Because the underground spirit beasts didn't dare to approach Xianxia planned to sell off all the Qi-nourishing pills he had left for himself. He had just found his old spot in the market when he saw such a scene in front of him. A second-grade alchemist, moreover a second-grade alchemist in the Qi refinement stage, everyone knew what this meant. At this time, the people who surrounded him were no longer greedy for the pills in Xianxia's hands, but for Xianxia himself. Once Xianxia could reach the level of a third-grade alchemist, then almost Xianxia could immediately become a guest of honor of the major sections. In the mortal world, a fourth-grade alchemist was almost the limit, and there had never been a higher-level alchemist. Any pill, as long as it could be refined by the third grade, its efficacy would definitely be increased by dozens or even hundreds of times. If it could be refined by the fourth grade, then it would no longer be an ordinary pill, but would already be an immortal pill. As for the top ninth grade, it seemed that Taishang Laojuan's 9 Revolutions Golden Pill could allow a mortal to ascend immediately. In this world, there was no need to even think about it. The jade bottle that Xianxia placed in front of him was directly snatched away, and on the white cloth in front of him, there were dozens of spiritual essences. Everyone knew that Xianxia would only sell a bottle of nourishing Qi Dan at a time, and no longer cared about elegance. They hurriedly asked, "Yang Junior Brother, do you have any more? I am willing to buy it at a high price." They thought that Xianxia would not take it out again, but they did not expect that Xianxia would take out a few more bottles. Similarly, it was snatched away by people. The second-grade nourishing Qi Dan was much cheaper than the Peiyuan Dan, but the effect was almost the same. Everyone knew the benefits of this. Seeing that Xianxia did not seem to have any more pills to take out, the crowd did not rush to snatch them again. Everyone took care of Xianxia's business, in addition to their own benefits, in order to be able to leave an impression in front of Xianxia, and in the future there would be plenty of days to interact with each other. After selling the pills, Xianxia did not want to stay any longer and was about to leave, when suddenly someone asked, "Yang Junior Brother, do you have any third-grade pills on hand?" It was a probing question, but Xianxia stopped, turned to look at the person who asked the question, and suddenly replied, "After I leave the immortal falling abyss." Boom, these words were like a spark thrown into a pot of boiling oil. Chapter 127. The efficacy of a third-grade medicinal pill was needless to say. Those who could refine a third-grade medicinal pill were all outstanding alchemists in this world. Almost all of the known third-grade alchemists were old monsters in the Yuanying stage and Deshang stage. It was not easy to meet them, let alone ask for medicinal pills. Xianxia in front of him could actually say that there would be a third-grade medicinal pill in a year. Did it mean that he could become a third-grade alchemist after leaving the immortal falling abyss? A third-grade alchemist in the Qi refining stage? This was no longer a genius, but an evildoer. Any medicinal pill, as long as it was in the third grade, even the most ordinary Qi replenishing pill, was enough to be comparable to the Lingji mushroom jade pill. It must be known that the Lingji mushroom jade pill, as long as it was below the Yuanying stage, no matter how serious the injury was, as long as there was still a breath left, it could successfully save the life and treat the injury. It was simply an elixir. "Junior Brother Yang, I am from the Qingkuan sect. In the immortal falling abyss. If there is anything you need, just tell me." Junior brother Yang, after leaving the immortal falling abyss, if you need anything, just look for my Mo Yun sect. For a while, there were countless voices around Yang Chen, competing to curry favor with Yang Chen. Everyone knew what it meant to be able to make friends with a third-grade alchemist, especially before a cultivator in the qi refining stage had become a third-grade alchemist. If they could provide enough help, the rich rewards would definitely make their own sect's head salivate. The chaos in the corner of the market immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the market. Everyone casually released their spiritual awareness and heard everyone's words, but no one understood how a cultivator in the advanced qi refining stage could be pursued by so many foundation-building experts, and there was no lack of early Jedon stage masters. Wait, a cultivator in the qi refining stage, and also in that corner, could it be the second-grade alchemist? Immediately, everyone understood everything and began to madly fly in this direction. More and more people gathered. The enthusiastic scene made Yang Chen have an impulse to run away. The enthusiasm of the cultivators made people think that Yang Chen was a great person. The scene was really breathtaking. This kind of enthusiastic scene, Yang Chen estimated that even if the current lord of Chunyang Palace came in person, he would not have such treatment. I appreciate everyone's good intentions. In the end, Yang Chen still had to come out and say something. After cupping his hands in front of his chest, he loudly said, "I'm still a junior, so I don't deserve such kindness from all the seniors. I'm still lacking some fire seeds for alchemy, so I need to search everywhere. If any of you seniors have any news of fire seeds or have fire seeds in your hands, I'm willing to refine a suitable batch of pills for you seniors in exchange." Once these words were spoken, some people were immediately tempted. Yang Chen's previous words were very full. After going out, there would be a third revolution medicinal pill. In other words, he estimated that he only lacked a high-level fire seed on hand, so he couldn't refine a third revolution medicinal pill. As long as the fire seed was in his hands, he could break through and become a third-grade alchemist. Although Yang Chen was a fire cultivator in his previous life, he was only lucky enough to find a fire seed, the true sunfire. It was very compatible with his great sun-blazing sun cultivation technique. Otherwise, Yang Chen would not have succeeded in transcending the tribulation and ascending. It was really difficult for a person to find a fire seed. If there were benefits, maybe these people would make great efforts to help him find it. No matter how high or low the grade of the fire seed was, it was not suitable for Yang Chen, but the profound spirit furnace could absorb it all and it could also improve the grade. For Yang Chen, there were only benefits and no harm. Why not? As for these cultivators, they also knew the current needs of Yang Chen, the future third-grade alchemist master. If they wanted medicinal pills, of course, they would help Yang Chen to work hard to find it. If they could find it, it would naturally make Yang Chen remember it deeply. At that time, even if they asked Yang Chen's head, it would be much easier to talk. In this world, it was not everywhere that there was a third-grade alchemist master that you could flatter from the beginning of the qi refining stage. Countless cultivators left with all kinds of hopes, and Yang Chen was finally no longer surrounded by many people and could do what he wanted to do. In the immortal falling abyss, everyone still cared about the trial and hunting spirit marrow. Making friends with the alchemist master was just taking advantage of the situation. Everything could only be said after going out of the immortal falling abyss. Yang Chen disappeared again in the immortal falling abyss and no one felt strange. All the people in the immortal falling abyss lived like this. No one knew where they would hunt the underground spirit beasts. This repair did not bring much substantial benefits to Yang Chen. It just gave people a reason to flatter him, and it also gave Yang Chen the opportunity to let others help him find the fire seed. Nothing else had changed. At present, for Yang Chen, nothing was more important to him than collecting the earth core fire. It could be said that in the 5 years since joining the Chunyang Palace to the present, Yang Chen's cultivation had not fallen for a day. Everything was all for the sake of being able to worship his master again. Yang Chen had a strong hunch that as long as he collected the earth core fire in the immortal falling abyss, his fire attribute cultivation would definitely reach the peak of the foundation establishment stage. No matter what, Yang Chen was also trapped in the qi refining stage. There were many things that could not be carried out before he officially reached the foundation establishment stage and could communicate with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. He could only rely on some other means to protect himself. Heading towards the location of the earth core fire, Yangchen walked very easily. As long as he went, the underground spirit beasts all quickly escaped. There were almost no obstacles as he moved forward. Far behind Yangchen, in several directions, there were people frowning. Yangchen's speed was really too fast, so fast that they could not keep up. Did Chunyang Palace have some method to deal with the underground spirit beasts? How can he walk so fast? Why didn't the underground spirit beasts attack him? Someone looked doubtfully at a complex compass in his hand, looked up at the direction where Yangchen disappeared, and frowned. A qi refining stage cultivator can become a third-grade alchemist? Such a person must not be allowed to stay in Chunyang Palace. In another direction, a black shadow was also holding a compass, looking at the trembling pointer on the compass with an unfriendly expression. Chunyang Palace really has a big reputation recently. Even a junior in the qi refining stage dares to swindle in the immortal falling abyss. We have to teach them a lesson. This was the thought of an expert. Could it be that Chunyang Palace has received the guidance of an expert? Why has the number of outer sect disciples increased several times in recent years? Even a junior in the qi refining stage can easily refine pills at the second revolution. A black-clothed man looked at the direction where Yangchen left with some saliva. I have to catch this junior and torture him out of the secrets of Chunyang Palace. Countless people followed behind Yangchen with various thoughts. However, the strange thing was that they all seemed to have the same compass in their hands, and all of them could point in the direction where Yangchen was. Chapter 128. Even if he released his spiritual awareness, Yangchen could not find these guys who had been following him for at least an hour. Although Yangchen's spiritual awareness was already in the middle stage of gold core, his spiritual power was far from enough. Being able to find enemies a few miles away was already his limit. Any farther away, Yangchen could not find them at all. However, no matter how hard the people behind him chased, they could not catch up with Yangchen's pace. As usual, the situation of the underground spirit beasts rushing madly made these people more and more convinced that Chunyang Palace or Yangchen must have a way to deal with the underground spirit beasts. This method must be obtained. In fact, Yangchen was not walking fast, he was just walking at a normal speed. In the immortal falling abyss, Yangchen did not have the luxury of flying. Although his level was now at the 7th level of qi refining, the 6th level of qi refining could basically fly with his own body without the use of talisman weapons such as paper cranes. But in this underground, walking honestly was the most reassuring way. One must not show off. The problem was that Yangchen's normal walking was a bit fast for the people behind him. Facing hundreds and thousands of underground spirit beasts, wanting to keep up with Yangchen, even if these masters had reached the foundation establishment or even the core condensation realm, they could not do it. They could only honestly kill their way out. Yangchen did not seem to know what was happening behind him, he just walked towards his goal as if nothing had happened. There was an underground river of magma in this direction. Many people knew that the location of the earth flame was in that underground river of magma. It was not a secret place, so it was not strange for people to go there. Anyway, he was a fire cultivator. Coming to this magma river was in line with his cultivation attribute. There was nothing that people could not figure out. Here in the magma river, there was always a dark red light. This was also the only place in the immortal falling abyss that had natural light. The red magma flowed slowly under the ground. From time to time, a few fire bubbles would emerge from the surface. The surrounding environment was extremely hot. If an ordinary person came here, they would not be able to withstand it for even a moment. Surprisingly, when Yangchen arrived here, there was already a figure standing on a high stone. His eyes seemed to be staring at the magma river. "You've finally come." Sensing Yangchen's movement, the figure on the rock turned around and said in a condescending tone, "I've been waiting for you for a long time." The faint red light reflected off his cheeks, just like the blood-red light when Yangchen walked out of the immortal beheading platform. "There's a lava river here, and you're short of fire seeds. Maybe you'll come here to try your luck and see if you can find the core fire. The other party seemed to want to express a kind of control that everything was expected. Without waiting for Yang Qin to speak, he eagerly said his own judgment. Am I right? You're very right. Yang Qin finally had a chance to speak, not because he was stunned by the man's demeanor, but because the man spoke too quickly and seemed to be intoxicated. Yang Qin was too embarrassed to interrupt him. When he saw the man's proud smile under the red light, Yang Qin said, "But even if you're right, what does it have to do with me?" A rhetorical question directly pushed the other party's sense of superiority and smile back into his stomach. The other party did not expect that Yang Qin would have such a tone. Such a statement was not the same as what he had expected. In his imagination, Yang Qin, a junior in the qi refining stage, was guessed by him in such a clever way, his heart would certainly be greatly shocked. Shocked, Yang Qin would certainly ask him for his name and then show his own name, so that Yang Qin's name would resound like thunder in his ears, and then he would be respectful, and the next thing would be logical. He did not expect Yang Qin to answer like this. In an instant, he had disrupted the man's plan and did not go according to his expectations. This made the man, who had always enjoyed the adoration of countless people in the sect, fly into a rage out of humiliation. Cut the nonsense. Kid, I just want to know a few things. If you tell me the truth, you'll be rewarded. The man first said the first few things calmly, then immediately changed his tone. Don't be so shameless. Well, as long as you give me enough benefits, there's nothing that can't be discussed. A smile appeared on Yang Chen's face. Tell me, what do you want to know? What benefits can you give me? Yang Chen's straightforward answer stunned the man again. The momentum that he had been accumulating for a long time was interrupted twice in a row. It was as if he had punched cotton, making him feel depressed and uncomfortable. Immediately, he no longer had that sense of superiority. The two of them used benefits to exchange for information. This was business, not a matter of who was superior and who was inferior. You're just a junior in the qi training stage. How can you come and go freely among the underground spirit beasts? In any case, Yang Qin showed a cooperative attitude. The man had no reason to flare up even if he wanted to. He could only directly ask his own question. Also, how can you become a second-grade alchemist when you're in the qi training stage? What's the secret behind this? These two are not too big of a secret. Yang Qin smiled slightly and then asked, however, what benefits can you offer? If it's too little, there's no way we can make a deal. As long as you tell me, I can spare your life. Use your life in exchange for these two little secrets. The man finally showed his fangs. This price is already high enough, right? As he spoke, the pressure in the sky was already unstoppable. A large net covered the sky. As he spoke, he had already begun to take action. He actually wanted to capture Yang Qin first and then interrogate him. Not good. The other party's crazy pressure could be ignored by Yang Qin. That pressure was just child's play for Yang Qin. However, that big net made Yang Qin's heart tremble. Once he was caught in the net, it would not be easy to escape in a short time. In a flash, Yang Qin's body rushed forward and stepped into the magma river. Then, Yang Qin's figure turned into soft flowing magma and disappeared in a flash. The other party's big net covered nothing, but he didn't expect that Yang Qin would not be affected by his momentum at all. Instead, he could use such a pure escape technique to disappear. But he immediately reacted and snorted coldly. A little fire escape technique. You just learned it and you dare to show off? Junior in the qi training stage, let's see where you can escape to. His figure flashed and disappeared in the magma river. Yang Qin was in the magma river, but he didn't seem to feel the crazy heat and moved forward easily. As soon as the other party chased into the magma river, Yang Qin felt his trace. So unforgiving, Yang Qin couldn't help but sneer. You want to compete with me in playing with fire? I want to see how powerful you can be in the fire. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.